as y'all know, there was a pretty big video that we produced a few days ago. On our channel, right? And that video was centered on some comments that former head coach Stan Van Gundy had to make about this current crop of NBA players. To just quickly reiterate what he said, 90s NBA teams had just a trainer, a strength coach. They practiced more often and harder and played more back-to-backs. Teams now have medical and performance staffs and value rest over practice, yet injuries and games missed are way up. Something is not working. That was what he put out there. And on that particular community post that we put up on our channel, it generated about 468 comments because it was one of these things that really caused a lot of people to have a visceral reaction. Based on some of the things I've been reading from watching other sports channels, what I understand is that there's a sentiment out there among some NBA fans that represents their displeasure with what they're seeing right now in the NBA. And one of those things particularly is the fact that players are load managing so much, right? And my favorite player currently playing in the NBA, Kawhi Leonard, has been heavily criticized for that, and I think justifiably, might I add. But this morning, while doing some research, I came across a soundbite of Charles Barkley on Sirius XM NBA radio, where he was talking about the load management that's been taking place in the NBA today and how he's looking forward to the next CBA because he believes the owners are going to severely deal with with these current NBA players. So what we want to do is we want to play exactly what Chuck had to say, and then we're going to come back and react to it. So take a listen to what Charles Barkley had to say there. Take a listen to that.
First of all, it's embarrassing for the NBA, and I cannot wait for these owners to put their foot in their asses in this next CBA. These dudes gonna do something to these players. They're gonna be like, wait a minute, you can't make $50 million and not play half the season, okay? Because now you just really just like slapping me in my face, taking my check twice a month. And we got guys like, and Eddie, I see guys that got a sore hip or something. I'm like, everybody's sore in the NBA after 20, 30, 40 games.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be very interesting in the next CBA because, the billionaires always wins against millionaires. And I think those owners are going to try to do something. I don't know what it is. I think there's going to be a strike or a lockout, however you want to phrase it. But I think they're going to say, okay, you guys don't want to play. I'm going to teach y'all a lesson. Because, we paid y'all during the pandemic. We didn't have nobody in the stands for a couple years, but we still paid y'all. And this is how y'all repay us, making all this money and not wanting to play. So, man, I think it's going to be very interesting in the next CBA. But, Eddie, to piggyback on your point, man, it's getting to the point where it's actually a joke now.
So you heard what Charles Barkley had to say there. He said that he feels like during the next CBA, these guys are going to deal with these NBA players, and it's going to be pretty it's going to be pretty bad. I think the sentiments that Charles just expressed is something that a lot of NBA fans feel. If you listen to some NBA fans talk about the load managing, there are two things that they talk about. The first thing is they don't like the fact that players are missing so many games and yet they're being paid these exorbitant salaries. That is something that bothers a lot of NBA fans. Whether you like it or not, it bothers people. Why? Because these fans spend a lot of their hard-earned money to come to games, drive to the arenas, pay for gas, pay for the ticket, pay for parking, pay for food, all of these different things. And all too often, what you end up happening is that you have a lot of these fans that go to these games just to get there to see a particular star, just to hear that so-and-so player is not going to be suiting up for that game. That is something that annoys a lot of players. Another thing that annoys a lot of fans. Another thing that annoys a lot of fans is the fact that these guys get paid so much money. So why can't they use their resources to ensure that they're ready, To quote the late and great Kobe Bryant, he said, "My job is to make sure I am ready to perform at a high level and go out there and play." He said, "My primary focus is to make sure I am ready to perform at a high level." And this is something that I believe is being forgotten about in the game. I think that we're not putting enough of an emphasis on what the fans think. What I've heard various NBA analysts, maybe former players, NBA journalists, whatever, talk about it. They always speak about it. I mean, Max Kellerman was doing this. He's always speaking about it from maybe the standpoint of the player or from the standpoint of the organization. Well, it's in the organization's best interest to make sure that this player's health is preserved, or is in this person's best interest. But they always leave out the fans. And I think that's a mistake, because if there are no fans, there's nothing to talk about here. There is nothing to talk about, literally. Right? Basketball is a spectator sport. So you better damn believe that you need to be paying attention to what the fans think, because they're the ones that are literally the cause of these guys making all this money. Literally. Because if they're not watching these games on television and they're not going to these arenas, there is no money. I believe 40% of the revenue generated in the NBA, if I'm not mistaken, is through ticket sales. Through ticket sales. So if fans are paying all this money to go to games, and when you get there, you don't see the player, it's a problem. Another person said in one of the comments, he said that it should be illegal for, not legal, but they should ban players being able to sit out or rest games on the road. They should only be able to rest on home games. And I was like, that's a pretty interesting policy. Why? Because fans get to see the players, I believe, for half the season. I think NBA teams play about 50% of the games at home, and then the other 50%, I believe, on the road, if I'm not mistaken. So if players are going to sit down for load management or for rest, let them sit out those home games where you have a higher likelihood, I'm talking about from the fan standpoint, to see these guys, instead of having them sit out road games where they may be only going to a particular city one time that year, and then those fans miss out on the opportunity to see that player. And I'm like, that's a fair point that individual made. But back to Charles Barkley's point, it's going to be pretty bad. It's going to be pretty bad for a few reasons. They're not going to forget about that situation with Kyrie Irving. I'm not talking about the vaccine, but they may bring it up, but also some things he did in the past. They're definitely not going to forget about the Ben Simmons situation with the Philadelphia 76ers and what happened there. And they're going to use those little moments as an example to make an example out of these guys. So I think the next CBA is going to be something like we have never witnessed before. It's going to be highly contentious. So these are my thoughts and opinions on this. What I want to know from you guys is, what do you think? Whatever you guys think, leave your thoughts in the comment section. Catch you on the next show. Peace.